In Panama, Rio Indio residents announced rallies against the construction of a dam in the Panama Canal Basin. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov announced diplomats will hold a meeting with their U.S. counterparts on Thursday in Istanbul. And on Wednesday, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa opened the G20 Summit of Finance and Economic Ministers in Cape Town. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos. I'm from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Panama, Rio Indio residents and several former national movements announced rallies against the construction of a dam in the Panama Canal Basin. Dina Benitez, farmer coordinator for Life, expressed that the authority of the Panama Canal disseminated fake news about the alleged acceptance of this project. She denounced a questionable and intimidating census that do not reflect the will of the people. Benitez recalled that since 1999, farmers have been waging a struggle in defense of their territory against the government program that includes the eviction of productive lands that they have occupied for several generations. That is the case of Rio Indio, vital for the agricultural and livestock activities of over 12,000 people. In other news, in Venezuela, the head of state, Nicolás Maduro, emphasized that in 90 days, the definitive proposal for the 2025 constitutional reform must be ready. During the meeting of the National Commission for the Constitutional Reform, the president stated that once the 60-day debate sessions have been held, the final drafting phase of the proposal generated by the expanded debate should begin. He also stressed that he trusts in the commitment of the deputies of the National Assembly to deliver the 2025 constitutional reform to the National Electoral Council in a reasonable time and to proceed with the referendum elections in the country. In this context, he also stressed that members of the failed opposition bench have reappeared to cause confusion and sow fear among the Venezuelan people regarding this reform. We continue in Venezuela as President Nicolás Maduro received the Japanese architect Riken Yamamoto at the Simón Bolívar Hall of the Miraflores Palace. During the meeting, proposals were discussed to consolidate urban structures in the country's cities in addition to advancing towards the self-management of each territory through the organization of the communes. It should be noted that this initiative seeks to strengthen sustainable development and communal self-governance. In this sense, Yamamoto's collaboration with Venezuela strengthens international ties and promotes an innovative approach to urban planning in the region. And in this regard, the head of state, Nicolás Maduro, also held a meeting with the great Muslim religious authority of Lebanon, Ali Muhammad al-Hazawi, to strengthen ties of friendship between Venezuela and Lebanon. During the meeting, the president reaffirmed Venezuela's intention for both countries to continue strengthening the diplomatic relations that were established since 1946. And other authorities, such as the representative of the Lebanese embassy in the Venezuelan territory, were also present. In other news, in Colombia, the police arrested a 40-year-old man who tried to smuggle several bags of cocaine hidden under a carefully placed toupee onto a flight to the Netherlands. According to police, this suspect was arrested on Monday at Cartagena Airport as he was about to board a flight to Amsterdam. A scan revealed the hidden shipment of 220 grams of cocaine packed in small bags strategically placed under the so-called narco wig. Police estimate the street value of the drug to be approximately 10,000 euros in the European markets. In this context, a police video captured the moment when an officer wearing blue gloves carefully removes the suspect's wigs with scissors, revealing approximately a dozen packets of cocaine.
After scanning this person, we found he had a wig containing more than 220 grams of cocaine, which he intended to take to the Netherlands. With this action, we attach the criminal revenue in Europe with an estimated price of more than 10,000 euros. This is the second detention at the airport in these checkpoints.
La segunda captura que se realiza en el aeropuerto en estos
And in Guatemala, survivors of the military dictatorship held a march to pay tribute to more than 200,000 victims of this internal armed conflict. Santiago Botón with the details.
This
is the commemoration of the National Day for the dignity of the victims of the internal armed conflict in Guatemala, and Mayanachi women, who are currently seeking justice in the courts, are also participating in the march.
They join this demand for justice, this demand that the state should no longer use sexual violence as a weapon of war. It is also a demand to the army.
Survivors of the military dictatorship have arrived in the Guatemalan capital to demand that the government of Bernardo Arevalo fulfill its commitment, announced a year ago, to promote a program for the dignification of the victims.
We ask for material reparation, restitution of land, truth, and above all to attend to the elderly women who lost their children, their husbands, in the internal armed conflict.
The survivors denounce that, on the contrary, the government has prioritized economic compensation for more than 40,000 former paramilitaries, which contradicts the narrative of a democratic government, as they have reiterated.
It is not possible that the military is being compensated. This does not fit in the mind of a civilized citizenry, to compensate the one who did wrong and to persecute the one who is doing good.
In addition to the demand for the dignification of the victims, there is still a large number of survivors who continue to search for their loved ones who disappeared during the 36 years of military dictatorship.
We continue in the struggle, in the search for justice, in the search for the disappeared, and on behalf of the victims of the internal armed conflict, we will continue to commemorate this day.
The National Day for the Dignity of the Victims of the Internal Armed Conflict was established following the presentation of the Historical Memory Report in 1999, which revealed that the state committed crimes of genocide.
Now we have a short break coming up, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. We continue with more information. Chile has managed to restore electricity to approximately 90% of the country's homes following a massive blackout that affected most of its territory. This blackout, which extended from the Arica region in the north to Los Lagos in the south, left millions of people without electricity and paralyzed essential services such as the subway and mining. President Gabriel Boric declared a state of emergency and established a curfew to guarantee public safety. The National Electricity Coordinator activated a recovery plan to restore service as soon as possible. As electricity is restored, authorities continue to work to fully normalize services in the country.
I made the decision to decree a state of exception due to a catastrophe from Arica and Paranacota regions to Los Lagos region. In addition to a curfew in the same areas from 10 p.m. until 6 a.m. on Wednesday. Although we know that in some communes and some sectors, the situation has been gradually declining, it is essential that we all act responsibly because the situation is still unstable.
And in this context, the Chilean government confirmed that 3 patients depending on electrical devices died during the national power outage. The president of the Luz para Ellos Foundation criticized the electric companies for lack of preventive measures. Authorities informed that one of the victims passed away due to the lack of a backup generator. Meanwhile, the Interior Minister Carolina Toa added 2 other deaths, noting that the patient's dismisses will be analyzed thoroughly. Also in this context, the Viña del Mar International Song Festival called off its activities as a result of Chile's power outage nationwide. After having canceled the production of the festival, reassigned its activities for next Saturday, March 1st, 2025. On a press release, the event organizer stated that the confirmed artist will be present on the new date, keeping up with the same agenda. The measure was pursued around 7 p.m. local time, 4 hours following the national power outage. And we now move on to other topics. Ecuador increased from 6 to 8 the number of provinces declared an emergency due to the heavy rainy season that is hitting the country, leaving 9 dead and almost 1,100 people affected since January. This measure was informed by the Secretary of Risk Management, Jorge Carrillo, in the face of the prolonged and powerful rainfalls that also affected some 16,500 people and more than 5,000 houses, as well as bridges and roads. In addition, on Monday, 4 members of a family died due to a landslide that affected a house in Manabí as a result of the downpours. The situation contrasts with the drought of 2024, the worst in 60 years, that resulted in forest fires and blackouts of up to 14 hours a day due to the affectations in the production of hydroelectric power plants.
This is the first year this has happened. The houses around there didn't used to flood. I have a sister-in-law and her house flooded. The bakery motor, the refrigerator, everything was damaged. Her house filled up with water. Those who have houses, they're going to lose everything. Refrigerators, appliances, beds are lost and damaged because the water reaches a point where you can't fight against nature.
And in other news, the White House announced it would sell a permanent residency with a gold card worth $5 million. President Donald Trump stated so on Tuesday from the Oval Office. The card will grant the privilege of permanent residency with the option of becoming a citizen. The U.S. head of state stressed that in addition to providing the funds, applicants must go through a rigorous vetting process to ensure that they are wonderful, world-class global citizens. Notwithstanding, it is important to recall that money laundering is one of the most prevailing crimes in the country. And also from the United States, social organizations rejected the aggressiveness of the Secretary of State Marco Rubio against Cuba, reminding him that the island's cooperation has saved lives all over the world while Washington exports wars. The Interreligious Foundation for the Community Organization Pastors for Peace has recalled the initiatives and programs of the island, such as the Latin American School of Medicine, which has become not only an opportunity to study, but also to train sensitive professionals. And now we have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English, there you will be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. From Qatar, Foreign Minister of Russia Sergei Lavrov announced that Russian diplomats would hold a meeting with their U.S. counterparts on Thursday in Istanbul to sort out issues concerning their embassies. Lavrov specified the encounter is aimed at normalizing bilateral relations, grounded in the fact that both nations had expelled their embassy personnel from the other during the Biden administration. As the Kremlin and Washington have been making negotiations regarding the conflict in Ukraine, tensions have started to diffuse between them. In reference to the Ukrainian-Russian dispute, Europe stated to be ready to provide peacekeepers to Ukraine as security warrantors, which Russia does not accept, as they are likely to be a gimmick to allocate weapons to the Kiev regime.
Our diplomats, high-level experts will meet with U.S. colleagues and consider systemic problems that have accumulated as a result of the illegal activities of the previous administration in creating artificial obstacles to the activities of the Russian embassy in the U.S., naturally. We responded by creating uncomfortable conditions for the work of the U.S. Embassy in Moscow. Such a meeting will take place tomorrow in Istanbul. I think that its results will show how quickly and effectively we can move forward.
And also on Wednesday, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa opened the G20 Summit of Finance and Economic Ministers in Cape Town. Multilateralism is once again the common factor in the opening speeches. Recalling that the group was founded on the principles of cooperation, the president called on the developed and emerging powers that make up this alliance to deepen multilateral cooperation. He referred to the escalation of tensions and the unprecedented global uncertainty to underline the importance of working together. The agenda of this conclave focuses on the reform of the financial architecture without neglecting to analyze the tariff threats from the United States, a country that is not attending this meeting.
It is vital to ensuring that the rights and interests of the vulnerable are not trampled beneath the ambitions of the powerful. Multilateral cooperation is our only hope of overcoming unprecedented challenges, including slow and uneven growth, rising debt burdens and levels,
We now move on to other topics. In Gaza, the Medical Aid Directorate warned of the aftermath of the cold wave and the growing shortage of basic supplies. Health authorities detailed that around 35,000 Gazan families have been facing all kinds of shortages of basic services due to over 158 months of Israeli genocide against the Gaza Strip. Furthermore, they estimated that over 60,000 mobile homes and 200,000 tents are required to assist the forcibly displaced for safeguarding them against the effects of extreme weather events. In this context, the United Nations indicated that close to $53 billion are needed to rebuild Gaza. And the Israeli forces killed 4 civilians in an airstrike in southern Lebanon in yet another violation of the ceasefire agreement with that nation. The Lebanese authorities reported that at least 2 people were wounded in the bombing and were taken to nearby medical centers. They also denounced the siege imposed by the troops of the Tel Aviv regime on at least 5 key points in the south of the country, and also the violation of the ceasefire agreement signed by Israel with the Islamic resistance movement Hezbollah on November 27th. And in this context, the Egyptian government has rejected an Israeli proposal to take over Gaza for 8 years in an exchange for Israel canceling its foreign debt. The proposal was made at a forum in the United States where the Israeli leader Yair Lapid suggested that Egypt administer Gaza for 8 or possibly 15 years. The Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi rejected this condition, affirming that Egypt would cancel its own debt and condemning the expulsion of the Palestinians from their land. The Egyptian leader called for the ceasefire to be maintained, reiterating his support for Palestine and his commitment to the reconstruction of Gaza, as the idea of U.S. control violates international laws and norms. And we now move on to other topics. In Sudan, a military plane crashed into Omdurman city, bringing about around 46 deaths and 12 others who were injured. The accident occurred in the Al Tarwa town in the Karari district, where the aircraft hit several residential buildings due to a technical failure. The military plane, which took off from the Wadi Saidna base in Khartoum, was bound for the Port Sudan city, the seat of the current government and the army command. Civilians and soldiers, including high-ranking military commanders, were among the fatal casualties. And in Nigeria, the Tinubu government has been pursuing bold economic measures that made the gross domestic product rise by 3.8% year-on-year. The National Bureau of Statistics briefed that the driving force behind this breakthrough was broadening by 5.37% the provision of services. Nonetheless, the growth did not reach yet the ambitious 6% target set by the Nigerian president. Marine economy, arts, culture, tourism, information technology, agriculture, industrial output, oil production, and e-commerce have been ramping up, which paved the way for obtaining higher GDP indexes. Therefore, the International Monetary Fund forecast the Nigerian economy to grow by 3.2% by 2025. And in India, Shivaratri festival celebrations carry on this Wednesday, summoning thousands of devotees to honor the Hindu god Shiva every year. Shiva is one of the main deities of Hinduism. Thus, worshippers gathered in temples to pour water or milk over a rock that represents the god of the sacred trinity Shivalinga, protector of those seeking enlightenment and truth. Devotees further perform fasts and vigils between chants and religious dances to honor the Holy Trinity of Hinduism. This festivity began on January 13th and up to date reports over 500 billion participants. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and also on TikTok. For TeleSUR English, my name is Belén de los Santos. Thank you for watching.